African history is not taught in the mainstream.
Sorry?
African history.
Yeah?
It is not taught in the mainstream.
No.
I wonder why. But now that you have taken it as extra curriculum activity, why are you not also teaching other history, like for example the Caribbean history?
Because the WLCC.
My reason is that
yeah.
you might not necessarily have students from African origin alone in your supplementary school.
When we speak about African, we are talking about African descent. Because when we talk about African descent, we are including the Caribbean people. We are trying to break down the boundaries that were developed, you know, and because we look at ourselves as we are all one people. We do not want to look at ourselves that we have Caribbeans out there and we have African out there, because the Caribbean people are the children of Africa. Therefore, we look at them as one people. Yeah.
Now,
perhaps I should say African descent history.
Yeah. I'm going to be really contentious and throw a spanner in the works. So, in terms of the research I write about, I'm very much sort of about Caribbean history has its own history, because even though the people from the Caribbean obviously came from Africa, once they hit those islands, they recreated their own culture with the slave owners and the indentured workers from China and India, and the native Indians that were there as well. So you've got the Mami Maroon, who kind of was a mixed race, mixed heritage person with the indigenous Indians as well as the African slaves. So Caribbean history as a point of history in and of itself in the Caribbean, for me, is actually really important as well. It's not something like a tunnel that we go past because we are particularly from Africa. We actually originated in the Caribbean as the Caribbean diaspora. So that's just me throwing my 2 pence in.
Just going to take a question from Jan, and I think you've got a question as well.
Well, I'll just throw something in as well. The issue raised about different history being taught rather than just white European history. This is something that's being brought up particularly within the Muslim community, because it has been raised that, you know, when you could look at maths and science as subjects that have had been greatly influenced by the Muslim community hundreds of years ago, and it's never mentioned the strides that were made, and this is, I know, an issue that a lot of the Muslim community are raising because of the prevent agenda, and because there are issues that are facing the Muslim communities that actually could be tackled much more favourably within mainstream schools if those things were supported, if that community wasn't seen as a negative, and that without that history, things might not have been discovered the way they were and in the time that they were. So that's something I'm throwing in for that one.
Mainstream school sees supplementary schools as a cash cow, and lots of schools are using their buildings to make lots of money, and I just wish that it was 10 years ago when the local authority had a means of ensuring that mainstream schools open their doors. It's not the case anymore.
I know that there are going to be those issues from the organisational, and general management of how this would work. But even if we weren't to use the building, but we were to learn from each other, that is still collaboration. You do do not need to physically be within the school to collaborate. So perhaps we could learn of each other, work together in that sense, rather than actually be within the building, for instance. And you can get over these, small hurdles. It can be done.
I think for the university, when they're looking at schools where they're called the mainstream education students, they're fulfilling their placement, then whether there's a means of then, getting together, linking in that way. And I know that, as I say, some mainstream schools are very supportive of the supplementary schools.
I mean, we're doing it already through like multi-agency work and things like that. We've already started working like that, and I'm sure that we can extend that to supplementary schools and learn a lot. Like Dr. Owen likes in his book as well. The general, the way mainstream actually is looking at the education for all, that the way that they are actually covering all cultures, all religions, and building up, self-esteem and self-confidence. Their idea and their version of it is more, what did you call it, Doctor? Was it samosas and something else?
Saris, steel bands and samosas.
Samosa kind of attitude.
Yeah,
So it's not really, they're only doing the celebration part of our culture in the sense that the saris and the samosas, as Dr. calls it, they're not really touching upon things that, you talked about for, like the Caribbean or, like background or, African background or even Muslim heritage like we talked. These things are not in mainstream schools, and if we start connecting with supplementary schools, maybe that connection could inject, a more deeper understanding of each other's cultures, and also we can learn about our similarities more, there's so much similar within our cultures. There's, that's the beauty of it. Instead of just looking at, the general Eid celebration, what is it about, or whatever the media is saying about Muslims, or whatever the culture of low expectation is for, black children, for instance, or, these things. We need to get past that, and the only way we can get past that is by collaborating with people who are working directly with these communities, these communities of, people from ethnic minority backgrounds, or, and mainstream is not going to be able to do that unless they open their doors. If they can open their doors to other agencies, why not to supplementary schools? We can get past the, small things like safeguarding, who's going to open the door, and these things, we can get past that. In order to, help all of our children to achieve, and all of them to have equal opportunities within education, we need to start thinking about these things, and recognising the good work that supplementary schools are doing. And I think the local authority needs to play a bigger part in that. That's all I wanted to say, really.
Can I just add one tiny thing, and I know we are running out of time, so I'm going to be in trouble later. So, I think one of the things we can do, perhaps, to engender collaboration between mainstream schools is, and I'm being a bit controversial, but hopefully just bear with me, is to go away from the Muslim history, the African history, the Caribbean history, because you know what? What we call white history, the European history, is a combination of all of those things. We all contributed to world history. So there actually isn't a sort of compartmentalised version of history, and maybe as schools, perhaps we just need to re-establish the fact that we all contributed to world history in our own ways, so that it's not a threat anymore. Everyone's equal in terms of we all contributed from whatever part. And if we're talking about British history in this country, through the British Empire and its colonial history, oh my goodness, didn't we contribute to Britain in terms of making it the empire? So we just need to, wherever, so Africa, the Caribbean, the Indian subcontinent, the Far East, let's do that and say world history.
Yeah, I agree with that.
Final question from Val, then we're going to have a break.
I think some of it's been sort of said. I think sometimes I've been in the community for a long time. I used to
Say where you're from,
volunteer.
Val.
Pardon?
Say where you're from.
Oh, sorry, I'm Val Rose from Aquarius Community Centre. So in turn, I started at Calmore Road, and I'm sort of glad that we're having this discussion, you know, very, very small in numbers, but, you know, supplementary school, you know, in terms of documenting our information, I think that's where I'm, you know, very weak in that. And as you said, you know, we're about making sure the young people are quickly, you know, going to achieve, not documenting. But I think in terms of this supplementary school, I need to read the, you know, the white paper, what you're talking about, because there's some element what we could, you know, sort of present ourselves. If they're writing these changes within the white paper, we need to be looking at that to say where we fit within the white paper, about parents' power as well, you know, community, and the communities made up of, you know, these are British-born children, what's born in this community. I understand we've got different cultural, you know, similarities and needs, but we talk about these British-born children, and they're the one what is not being, you know, catered properly. Otherwise, they wouldn't be attending supplementary school. So there's a need for that, and I think we need to be, you know, instead of talking about putting barriers about safeguarding, whatever, all the schools staff have had their DBS, so it should be an issue. We attend training. You know, it should not be an issue. We're working in partnership with a couple of the schools in MEaP at the moment. They was very reluctant, you know, for us to engage with them. But now, because they're seeing our present, parents are talking about where the children are going. You know, they are changing. And in terms of monitoring some of our children, we use the report, the children report. When they came to us, we have a look at their report. And we look at the areas what needs to be addressed, and we get parents to go back and do that. So we keep evidence of their report. It's not a lot, but it's something. Then we say, well, you need to go back to the school and say this, and we work in that area. And we do have our conversation with school, but it is very difficult, and it depends on their teacher in that school as well. But I don't think it's impossible. If we've got the white paper there, we need to be working within that, rather than looking for barriers or reasons to stop us, you know, developing. These are our children and the British-born children, and that's what we should be looking at. Sorry.
I think just to contribute to you really raised a very important issue there, and I think, as Honor said before, the white paper quite neglected the career, you know, enrollment or
Enterprise.
the enterprise, because we're looking at our society that right from the small age, we should already develop them to have an eye on these things, so that they are not just going through school, further education, higher education, and they are expecting to get a job from someone, but we should develop them even right from the age group as enterprises, because this is the only way we can liberate ourselves. And to be honest, maybe that is really an area that we have to work hard and feed into the white paper, because it's neglected.
I'm just going to ask you to hold that thought, because we're going to address some of these issues during our